Well, we begin in Moscow, where the heart of the Russian capital's financial district has been hit by drone strikes. It happened early on Sunday morning. Now, one person was injured in the blast. No other injuries or deaths have been reported. Part of the facade of a 50-story skyscraper, though, was damaged.
My friends and I rented an apartment to come here and unwind, and at some point we heard an explosion and it was like a wave. Everyone jumped, and then there was a lot of smoke and you couldn't see anything. From above, you could see fire.
Well, this is the first attack to hit Moscow's financial district, which houses Russia's top companies. It's also the first time that drones have targeted this particular area of the city. The mayor has blamed Ukraine. Well, Russia's defense ministry says 3 Ukrainian drones were shot down in this dawn attack. That includes one brought down in the city's outskirts. Vnukovo International Airport was also briefly closed for about an hour, and the airspace over Moscow and surrounding areas was also temporarily closed. Well, for more on all of this, let's speak to Daniel Hawkins. He's in Moscow. Daniel, a very bold attack there on the capital this morning. Talk us through how it all unfolded.
Well, absolutely. You could say this attack is unprecedented, as you say, in terms of how bold it is and how close it is to the heart of the Russian capital. It took place in Moscow City, which is around 5 minutes' drive from this very studio. In fact, you can see most of the towers of Moscow City from the other window, just on the other side of this apartment. It took place, as you say, in the early hours, involving 3 drones, as the Russian Ministry of Defense said, one of which was brought down outside the limits of the city, and 2 further drones crashing into a non-residential building complex in the heart of Moscow City. Now, the IQ Quarter, as it's called, where this attack took place, is actually home not only to luxury apartments and businesses, it's also home to multiple government agency offices, the Telecommunication, Economy and Trade Ministry as well. Some of Europe's tallest buildings, the 2nd and 3rd tallest buildings in Europe, are nearby as well. So this is a very high-profile area, and had this attack, of course, taken place not on a Saturday night in the early hours, but in the daytime, there is no doubt at all that this would have caused many more casualties than just one of those injuries reported. Now, those buildings have been evacuated, the ones which were damaged. The functioning of Vnukovo and Moscow's other main airports are now back to normal, but certainly the scale of those explosions, the dramatic images of those flames in Moscow City, in the very heart of the Russian capital, left many people in that residential apartment building and beyond as well in shock.
I'm sure. I've been wanting to ask you about that, Daniel, because now that the war has really, truly reached the streets of Moscow, how are people there feeling?
Well, slowly, this is almost, you could say, becoming the new normal for Muscovites. I think for most people, as this conflict dragged on, to start with, it was something that was rather far away, something that didn't affect people directly, aside from perhaps some of the economic impacts. And as this conflict has progressed in waves, this has come closer and closer to home. The shelling of those border areas between Russia and Ukraine, the border regions of Belgorod and Kursk, then the mobilization, of course, which affected several groups of the population. Now this is very much a case of what could happen next. People just don't know, because if areas like Moscow City, if even the Kremlin, as we saw those images several months ago, can be targeted in such a bold manner, anywhere and anyone potentially could be next. And I think questions are going to be asked by people as to how this happened. People are used to seeing enhanced security measures, the air defences, for example, on the roof of the Moscow Ministry of Defense, police with anti-drone rifles at events, very strict laws governing the use and the launch of drones, not only in Moscow, but beyond in Russian regions as well. Yet somehow these drones have managed to evade these defences and strike at the very heart of Moscow. It very much highlights the increasing risk and cost of the conflict, potentially for the Russian population. And I think official figures and media figures will use this as evidence to cite this attack, as evidence, as they say, of Ukrainian aggression towards Russia and of the need to complete the aims of what they call the special military operations. So very much questions will be asked of the MOD as to how these drones got through, if these attacks could be stopped in future, and will leave many people wondering where could be struck next. It could be their house, it could be their office. Very much a feeling of uncertainty this morning in Moscow.
Daniel Hawkins there in the Russian capital for us. Thank you so much, Daniel.